excited to be bringing y'all devotional today. I hope that you guys can really take something from this, and I hope that I can bring something that's encouraging and uplifting and something that we can apply to our lives today. So I'm going to be going to Numbers chapter 13, verses 26 through 33. And it says, "We went to the land where you sent us. It truly flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruits. Nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land are strong. The cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the south. The Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the banks of the Jordan." Then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, "Let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it." But the men who had gone up with him said, "We are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we." And they gave the children of Israel a bad report of the land which they had spied out, saying, "The land through which we had gone as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants. And all the people whom we saw in it are men of great stature. There we saw the giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so were we in the sight of them." So today I want to be talking to you about the subject of faith over fear. Faith over fear. You see, we all have something that we're afraid of. You see, some of us might be afraid of the dark. Some of us might be afraid of heights, public speaking. Some of us might be afraid of spiders, or some of us might be afraid of the unknown. Me personally, I'm afraid of heights. I don't like heights. Anything that really takes you up really high. Maybe like I'm roller coasters, for example. I can handle roller coasters, but I'm not like the biggest fan of roller coasters because I tend to almost pass out on the drop. So I don't like that. That's something that I'm not necessarily fearful of, but something that I don't like, something that I dislike. But sometimes the fear of roller coasters for me often stops me from stepping out and trying a new roller coaster, or trying a new ride, or trying something different. And that fear is ultimately what stops us from stepping out. You see, whenever the Israelites were at the Promised Land, they sent out 12 spies to spy on the people who were in the land, and Caleb returned with a good report, whereas the other 10 spies returned with a bad report. You see, Caleb came back with a good report and said, "Let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it." He's saying, you know what? We're well able to overcome these. I see the giants. I see the high walls. I see the same. I see what you're seeing. But, I believe in my God, and I believe that my God can overcome this. I believe that my God can do great things. I believe that, He brought us out of all the things in the past. I mean, you saw what He brought us through in Egypt. You see all the things that He brought us through in the wilderness. He brought us out of bondage. One of the greatest nations at that time, in that time period, God had brought us out. God had brought us out of that bondage from the greatest nation in history up to that point. He had brought us out, and so I have faith in our God. That if He can take care of the greatest nation, then He can take care of a few measly giants. He can take care of the few things that may seem in our way. He can take care of the few walls. He can take care of all the things that are in front of us. But you see, the other spies, the people who had also gone up with Caleb said, "We are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we are." And they gave the children of Israel a bad report of the land which they had spied out, saying, "The land which we have gone as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw in it are men of great stature," meaning they are giants. "There we saw giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight." You see, these men who reported the bad report are often like all of Israel. They forgot about all the things that God had done for them. They had forgot about the things that God had done for them in the past, the things that God had brought them out of, the things that they forgot about the Egypt. They forgot about the wilderness where God had given them manna. He had given them water. He had given them everything that they could have possibly needed. He even gave them a tabernacle. He gave them a way to commune with them. He gave them a way for forgiveness of sins. He gave them a way to have redemption and a way to have salvation, and they had completely forgotten about that. You see, there are two different perspectives here that I want to note. You see, Caleb had set his eyes on God rather than the size of the giants, of the things, on the size of the enemy, and on the size of the enemy, and on the size of everything that was in front of him, everything that everything that stood against him, everything that the enemy had done to stand against him, he recognized, and he said, you know what? I know what my God's done for me in my past, and I know and I see that God is going to bring me forward. He says, I see what God's going to do, and he says, you know what? God brought us out of all these things in the past. Why can't he bring us through something? Why can't he bring us through these enemies? Why can't he bring us through these giants in our world and in our land? You know, God has told us that, you know, this is our land, so, you know, why can't we go get it? You know, if God has given it to us, then what is stopping us? What is stopping us from going out and possessing that for ourselves? However, the other spies, the second perspective that I want to bring is of the spies. You see, the spies had set their eyes on the size of the enemy rather than their God. So they were fearful. You see, they saw all these things. They saw the giants in the land, and they saw the giant walls. They saw all the things that were in the land that stood against them. They saw all the things, and they saw all the things that stood against him, and they saw all the things that were, you know, against him, and saw the great walls. They saw the giants in the land, and they said, you know what? I don't believe that our God can bring us out of this. You know, we aren't able to possess it in our own strength, you know, because, you know, these men are so great. They're so tall. Like we think in our own mind, like they're so tall that they're these great and strong men that even in our own eyes, we perceived ourselves as grasshoppers in their sight. Like if we were them, we would perceive ourselves as grasshoppers. We perceive ourselves as something that's so insignificant, something that's so small and has no relevance to today, something that has no relevance to them. You see, they were both looking at the same thing. You see, Caleb and these other men, they were both looking at the same thing. But they were looking at the same giants. They were looking at the same walls, the same land, the same circumstances, and the same situation. The only difference was Caleb's perspective. You see, Caleb chose to see through the eyes of faith. You see, if we set our eyes on God's promises, if we set our eyes on his promises and on the things that he has promised to us and on the things that he is telling us we are going to possess, then we will be able to step out in faith and receive that all that God has for us. You see, Caleb, he saw all the things that God had for Israel. He saw all the things that, you know, God had told them that they were going to have the land, and he saw that, and he's like, you know what? I believe that we are going to get this. I believe in my own mind, I believe that, you know, I have a great faith that God is going to bring me out of this, and that God is going to bring us into the next step of our journey and in the next step of our lives. You see, but if we're like the other 10 spies and our eyes are on our enemy or the situation that is before us, then oftentimes we can settle into fear. We can oftentimes settle into this, well, you know, I see what's before me, and, you know, even in my own strength, it's like sometimes we don't consider the strength of God in these situations. Sometimes we don't consider the hand of God that is moving on us and is with us and is for us, and we don't recognize that, you know, if God is for us, who can be against us? They didn't recognize that God was for them, so that nothing could really stand against them. Nothing was going to be able to withstand the hand of God, and we be able to withstand the might of God. So if we let that mindset of fears settle into our hearts and into our minds, then we're going to become fearful, and we're going to say, you know, we can't do this. Like, we're not going to be able to overcome this virus. We're not going to be able to, our church isn't going to be able to grow after this virus. You know, all of our growth has been stunted. Like, all these things are happening. You know, I was just really getting my ministry going. And, you know, all this suddenly, like, this virus comes out, and this virus, you know, starts infecting people, and our state goes on lockdown. I'm not able to do anything. You know, my ministry's gone. I have no purpose anymore. But you see, it says in the Bible, fear not 366 times. And that's one time for every day. That's one fear not for every day of the year. That includes leap year. You see, what God is trying to show us in that is to not fear, to not be afraid of the storm that's around us, to not be afraid of the virus that is around us. Yeah, we need to take the right precautions. Yes, we need to follow the government laws. We need to follow the things that we have set before us, but we don't need to be afraid, because if God is for us, who can be against us? We don't need to be living out in fear and say, you know what, I'm not going to be able to text this person. I'm not going to be able to call this person. You know, my ministry is stunted now. I'm not going to be able to do anything. You know, I'm not going to be able. I can't do a devotional like a lot of these people are doing, or I can't. There's so many voices in our head that say, you know what, you can't. I can't do this. I can't do that. And, sometimes we just need to realize that, sometimes we can. If God is for us, who can be against us? So what God's trying to show us is that it's so important to not be afraid of the storm that's going on around us each day. And that we have to trust in Him and have a faith that says, I choose to see through the eyes of faith rather than the eyes of fear. See, we need to start seeing through the eyes of faith and say, God, Lord, give me the eyes of faith. God, Lord, let me see how you see. Let me see what's going on. God, Lord, give me the discernment of spirits, God. Lord, let me be able to tell and feel out what's going on in the spiritual realm, God. Lord, let me be able to see what you're doing and see how you're working, God. Lord, and even if you don't, God, Lord, I may not understand in my own mind what you're doing, God, but I'm going to trust you and I'm going to continue to step out in faith, God. But I'm going to continue to tune into services, God. I'm going to continue to attend drive-in services. I'm going to continue to do all these things that you're telling me to do and all these things that, that you've told us to do, everything that your word says, God. But I'm still going to hold standards in this time. I'm still going to do things, God, that you've called me to do, God. God, that I'm going to see through the eyes of faith rather than the eyes of fear. I just want to encourage someone today, don't let fear settle in your heart. Don't let fear settle into your life in these times, and don't let fear settle into your family and into your faith. Because oftentimes in times like this, which I know that I've not been around very long for something like this to happen, but don't let the fear settle in to your faith. Let your faith override the fear. Let your faith override what the world is saying, and let your faith override what the fear is saying in your heart. All right, guys, I love you. I appreciate you. And yeah, y'all have a good day. God bless.